All right, happy Wednesday. It is the last day of November. Isn't that hard to believe that time, the whole year has just gone by? We have one more month in 2022. But we are glad that you've joined us. It's going to be a great webinar. You've joined Innovate BC in partnership with Can Do. You know, these webinars are all about listening to the story, taking in the knowledge that's being presented, being inspired, building our capacity. So we're really honored that you've joined us. I am here in Amiskwaciy, Waskagan, Edmonton, Treaty 6 territory, and it is winter here. Winter is here to stay. We had like a moment where it felt like maybe fall, spring last week, but winter's here. And so a new season's upon us. Well, coming up into December 21st anyways. So we're honored that you're here. I hope you're well. I hope you're safe. I hope you're healthy wherever you are. We're delighted that you're here. We always say fill out those evaluations. So we'll do a little bit of housekeeping here. Fill out those evaluations. There will be an evaluation link sent to you at the end of today's presentation. And because it is the last day of the month, a draw will be made. And I believe it's at one $500 Visa gift card. So if you're like Ken, who comes every webinar, he has more chances to win that Visa gift card. But we really honor and we really value your voice and your feedback. So that's really important for us on our end to hear, you know, any thoughts that you might have about our webinars. So thank you for being here. There will be opportunity at the end for questions, comments, dialogue. But if you have any questions along the way, please use that chat box. That is why it's there. Also, I love using those reaction buttons. So if you like what you're hearing, if there's a story or a piece of knowledge that really, you feel it, you're hearing it, you're for it, use that reaction button. All right, so you're not here to listen to me speak, but so I'm going to introduce our guest speakers. And yes, please, in the chat box, let us know where you are joining from. We always love to hear where our families coming from on our webinars. So we got Mohawk territory in the room today. Yes. I'm going to attempt I am not going to attempt that. Patrick, can you help me out? Can you tell us what community you're from? I just won't do it justice if I attempt it.
With pleasure. It's Ganesadage.
Beautiful. Well, welcome. We're honored you're here. And feel free, everybody else, to let us know where you're joining from. I hope the weather's good out there for you.
40 millimeters of rain. Rainfall warning.
Oh gosh, so you got some rain happening. Definitely, our Mother Earth needs that moisture, needs to recharge, needs to renew. So all of this moisture, snow, rain, all of that, is really helpful. All right, so before we officially get started, let's just take a moment. I always like to press pause, take a deep breath. Maybe close your eyes. Sometimes closing the eyes doesn't feel safe, so you look down and just take a moment to acknowledge the gifts that have been given to you in this day. Gift number one was when that sun rose in the east. That's Creator meeting us for another day. So we give thanks for that gift. Gift number two is that we have breath in our lungs. The fact that we can take that deep breath, we can breathe, that's a gift right there. And then the rest, you can decide. You can extend that gratitude. So you have been given so many gifts already. So we just want to take a moment to acknowledge the goodness of Creator, that we don't walk alone in this world. We are surrounded by all of our relations, all of our relatives, the animals, the plants, the sacred waters, all of the medicines, our loved ones. So we do not walk alone in Creator's world. So we just want to take a moment to acknowledge that and give thanks. All right. So today's topic is personal branding basics. So we got the Pipiguan, Piteguan, crew joining us this afternoon. I feel like we're in good company today. There's 4 of them. I think that, sacred number 4. So we got 4 guest speakers today. So we got Elizabeth, we have Melaina. Melaina, am I saying your name right?
It's Melaina.
Oh, Melaina. Okay. Cameron and Peyton. So welcome, welcome. We're honored that you're here. They're coming to share a presentation on personal branding. Is it working for you? How do you want to be seen? How do you portray yourself and your branding in this world? Sometimes, yes, it's a daunting task, but there is good tools and tips that they're going to provide to us. So they will share how they incorporate Indigenous knowledge into their everyday approach to branding, which is so important. So you will leave the presentation with a how-to guide for self-reflection. So you'll walk away and just kind of assess, is your branding working for you? Maybe what could you change? What could you bring your story into the message, the branding that you are about. All right, so a little bit, because we got 4 guest speakers, so I'm just going to share a little bit about each one. I believe their bios are actually up on the website too. So if you're interested, go please have a read, because these are, educated people who are here today. So Elizabeth is the communications manager for an Indigenous-led and majority-staffed PR agency, which is the Pipiguan Peteguan. She uses her gift for connecting and storytelling, along with her passion for inclusive communities, which is so, so important. With her work with Indigenous clients and non-Indigenous organizations who are looking to improve their relationships with Indigenous peoples. Next, we have Melaina, as she's a recent graduate with a Bachelor of Design degree from the MacEwan University here in Edmonton. So specializing in graphic design, branding, photography. I'm so admire the gifts that you bring to the table. We got Cameron, who also graduated with a degree in visual communication from NAIT. A field that he's always found himself passionate about. His background in communications and visual designs infuses his unique but effective approach to creating beautiful and harmonious designs. And lastly, we got Peyton. Last but not least, Peyton was born in Newfoundland, beautiful land out there, and Labrador, and comes from Mi'kmaq and settler ancestors, a student in the Indigenous Bachelor of Social Work program at the Yellowhead Tribal College, which is amazing. She has earned her social work diploma from MacEwan University. Awesome. So she's joining us from High Prairie, Alberta, and the other 3 are joining us here from Amiskwichiwaskagan. So welcome, team. We're honored you're here. We look forward to your knowledge and your inspiration, and I imagine creativity and the tools and tips you're going to bring to us around personal branding. So I'm passing this virtual mic off to you. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Michelle. That was quite an intro. I appreciate that. I love the energy that you're bringing today. Thanks to everyone else for joining us as well. We're thrilled that you're spending your valuable time on a cold Wednesday, or at least here in Edmonton with us, to learn more about personal branding basics. In our presentation today, we're going to talk about the daunting task of creating a personal brand, where to start, what to think about, and how we as an Indigenous-led organization share knowledge and our approach when it comes to thinking about branding in a decolonized way. So as Michelle stated, my name is Elizabeth, and we work for an agency called Pipiguan Peteguan, and we're an Indigenous-led and majority-staffed public relations and engagement agency who's focused on elevating Indigenous voices, projects, and issues. As an agency, we also invest in youth to build capacity and community, as we believe that this act helps us lift up Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, and our focus is building our organization with 7 generations in mind. So with that, When starting your company, it's critical to think about your personal brand and how you can create an engaging, unique, and inviting personal brand that stands out. But for many people, this personal branding is not something that comes naturally. I mean, what actually is it? Talking openly about what we do well and differently to others can sometimes be really difficult, but unless you can clearly articulate what you do and why you're different, it's going to be difficult to stand out and make an impact in a really increasingly competitive landscape. So there's a lot to think about, and we want to share a few tips with you. Next slide. So our first tip that we want to share with you is to be clear about your focus. One of the most helpful models that I've found is, I'm not sure if you're familiar who Simon Sinek is, but he has the golden circle. And he talks about your why and your purpose, thinking about your why. It's worth highlighting this because when you're looking at this through a personal branding lens, when you start with your why and you take an inside out approach to what your brand is, this will give you the ability to find an authentic purpose and which others can begin to associate with. Think about the what, the how, and the why you exist. What's the bigger picture? If you were put on the spot tomorrow, what would you say is your purpose in one sentence? Keeping your message focused will make it easier to create content around your brand. The more narrower and focused your brand is, the easier it will be for people to remember who you are. As a professional communicator, I'm passionate about social equity and inclusion and feel like in my professional life, that's a realm that as a communicator, I can really make a difference in. Language matters, obviously. So I wear a few hats, and one of those is as the president of a local chapter for an international business association, Business Communicators Association. And so what I share publicly also reflects my personal passion for inclusivity and communications. And I feel that's why I'm connected to certain projects and brought on as an expert in sharing resources about inclusivity and social equity issues. Next slide. So I think the easiest way to have an original personal brand is to be genuine, be authentic, be real. People can always tell when you're not being real. And the more obvious it is, the more people will call you out for it. When you're genuine and real, it's so much easier to manage your personal brand. Your content will really just amplify who you are as a person. And if you're deeply skilled in one particular area, your reputation will help you build that brand. Without a clear vision of who you want to be and what your plan is to get there, you might find that there's inconsistencies in how other people perceive you. And there might be confusion about what you stand for. While there's nothing wrong with changing your mind or your direction, it's no coincidence that companies and entrepreneurs with clear, differentiated brand strategies outperform their competitors. They found a position of clarity, they're committed to a strategy, and over time, they've built a brand that's recognizable to others. On the flip side of that, though, it doesn't mean that you have to share everything about yourself. Of course, you can always share what you can decide what you share and what you keep private, but just keep it real with what you are sharing. Next slide. So as Indigenous peoples, we know that storytelling is one of the most powerful ways to connect. As a consumer, off the top of your head, you can probably think about a brand story that you already connect to. For me personally, when we were talking about it today, I was thinking about the story of Ben and Jerry's. They believe that their business has a responsibility and unique opportunity to be a powerful lever of change in the world. And through their bold ice cream flavors and their names, they lead with a progressive mission, and they aren't afraid to wade into social equity and climate justice issues. And they've stayed true to that narrative throughout their 40+ year history, which I think is not bad for a couple of guys who started an ice cream shop in a renovated gas station with a $5 correspondence course in making ice cream. So create a story around your brand that your audience can engage with. And one of the best ways to do that might be through written content or video. I would say that the most personal way to communicate online with your audience is through video. We all have smartphones. You could use it to create a video message for your clients or make a personal connection with prospective clients by sharing more about who you are and how what you do can make a difference for them. At the end of the day, I think people just want really to be heard, seen, connected, and know that they matter. So storytelling, as we know, does all of this by engaging with your audience. It involves them. It gives them something more than what they started with. I would say that using the benefits of storytelling to strengthen your relationships and nurturing your connection with your clients could be critical for your success. Peyton, can you talk a little bit more about storytelling in our Indigenous cultures and how that knowledge connects to personal branding?
Yeah. Hi. Thanks both of you, Michelle and Elizabeth, for starting us off in a good way. Mio Gisagao, it's a good day, you know? And I think a lot of what you're saying is really relevant to this idea of how do we do personal branding. And so I want to start with a little bit of a quote. Cameron, if I can just switch over. This is a lesson I learned from Elder Betty Bastine, and she's from Piikani First Nation. She's also an instructor at Yellowhead Tribal College and the University of Calgary. But Betty said one day, dividing your personal self and your professional self is an act of self-harm. We cannot fragment ourselves if we are to be whole. And so I've thought about this ever since she taught me this lesson for a long time. And I think it really does impact your branding. You know, what does this mean? What this means is that you're more than just your business and that you can't have two separate places where you do branding. Those are going to be connected. And, you know, we've all heard that, oh, well, when you leave for work in the morning, whatever happened at home stays there. And then when you go to work, whatever happened there, you leave it at the door. When you walk at home, it's home. But we can't disconnect like that because we as people cannot fragment ourselves. And I think we've tried for long enough. And so when you're thinking about your personal branding, I want you to keep this in mind, this fragmentation on it does have an impact to how you're going to look at your brand. You know, it does change. If you accept that you're the same person in your personal life and your professional life, then your branding is going to change how you respond to decisions or issues. It's going to humanize your business. It's going to allow you to be yourself in all of those spaces. You know, back to what Elizabeth said, how important it is to be authentic. As much as you want to, you know, that's where we get into issues with branding, is when people see you in different environments doing different things, then they say, well, is that person or what does that business really stand for? So when you bring all of those together in your brand, it allows you to create a stronger brand that's really going to work for you. And I mean, it is a way of decolonizing your business. So I think that's really important. And it also helps us decolonize our thinking, which is a really big effort that we need to make. So we want to give you a little bit of an exercise. Cameron, if you can slide over. So this is a tool you can take with you today after this session, and you can try this at home. I'm going to give you a little bit of time. I want to work through some of that with you, but basically what we're going to do is you're going to start thinking about how you see yourself or how you want to be seen. The adjectives that you would like to be described as. Take a second as we're talking about this. If you've got a pen, scribble it down beside you. Say them out loud if you want to speak those words, hear that truth come out of your own mouth. Type it onto your keyboard if you've got a Word document open. But just make a list of 5 adjectives. And when I first did this exercise, I thought to myself, if this is a little morbid, you guys, sorry, but I thought if someone was giving my eulogy, what would I want them to say about me? And so that'll tell you at your very heart what your truth is, what your personal brand is, or what you want your brand to be. But then after you've really sat with that for a while and you feel very confident in what your brand should be and some of those characteristics that will represent your personal brand, I'm going to challenge you to take some time and send it to some people that you are really close with. They could be friends, they could be family. They don't all have to be people you love, though. They could be people you've had challenges with. But I would say choose people that have a little bit of a tenure so that they can see some of the trends in how you've grown. I mean, it's no good to send it to your high school partner, like your boyfriend or girlfriend from 10 years ago that you dumped on prom night. That person's not going to be a good reflection of your brand. But people who've seen you and who've worked with you over the while. And you can create a tool. So I've got a little QR code here. I'll also put it in the chat. but this will direct you. I just made a quick fun one. You don't have to actually use it. You can if you want to. It's fun for me. But this is a Slido tool and it's completely anonymous. When you do this work, I think it's important that the people who you are asking for feel safe to give you that feedback, positive and negative. So you can create a Slido completely for free, send this out, and it only needs to have one question, really. What are the top 5 adjectives you would use to describe me and my character? And if people know, and you've said to them, this is anonymous, I will absolutely not be able to see it, please give me that feedback, you're going to get a real reflection. And then what you can do is, after some time, you can look at the way that you would prefer to recognize yourself and your brand, and you can see how other people see you. And another way that we fragment ourselves is not based on personal and professional, it's also based on our own perspectives, how we see ourselves and how we want to be seen. So by doing this exercise and getting that feedback from other people, you can see, are the adjectives that I want reflected the ones that I'm putting out into the world? And if not, then you have an opportunity to develop some strategies over how do I tie my personal brand into my whole self. So very interestingly, when I first did this exercise, I did it with a lot of my colleagues, some of my close friends at school. I worked in post-secondary for 10 years. I gave it to a couple of my students who I was really close with. And almost consistently, one of the biggest things that came out was that I'm outgoing. I know that that is something that I put out into the world, and that it's very easy to think that I'm a more confident, outgoing person, but not a single person had identified me as being soft. And that was my very first adjective I put on my list. Obviously I'm in social work. I've been practicing social work for many years. I have gone back to YTC to decolonize my practice. So I'm going to a sovereign school, and I realized nobody is seeing me as soft. And it's because the only moments that I actually put that into my life are only in my personal life. None of that happened in my professional life. I didn't bring those together. So this exercise is a really good opportunity for you to blend and defragment yourself. So, and I'm seeing some people made some fun comments for me. So energetic is one of them. I drink a lot of Red Bull. It's artificial energy, you guys. Great. Cameron, I'll get you to, yeah, so Slido is the tool that you can use, but I mean, you can do it any way you want. You can also put it in like a piece of paper and just ask them to write it and then send it back to you anonymously, however works for you. But Slido is just one tool that you can have. And I want to gift you with this other word, and we use this at Pipiguan, Pataguan all the time. It's a fundamental way that we do engagement and research in many of our departments. Kyokuin, I'll explain what it means first, and then I'll show you how it relates to your personal brand. So Kyokuin is a term that was coined by a lady named Cindy Gaudette back in 2019, and it means the visiting way, roughly translated. Kyokuin is actually centered in both Cree and Métis ways of knowing and being. And it's a research methodology. It's an Indigenous research methodology that changes the way that we interact with people. The word itself, visiting, is really different when you think about it from a Western context and versus an Indigenous context. So this is another way you can decolonize your branding. If I was to say to you, like, let's visit, and we think about it from a Western context, it means you're going to come over to my house. I'm going to let you come in. I'm probably going to give you some food. I'm going to host you, and you just show up, and your job is to be there. And then I send you on your way with a good experience. There's a lot of pressure in the host of visiting. And it's not really transactional in a lot of ways. It actually, if you think about it, is grounded in some of these underlying values that we don't really even talk about anymore. Back in medieval times, people would visit as a way to explore or to fight. So they would either visit you to explore new places, or they would use it to attack you. And so there's a lot of history and values grounded in visiting. It means, from a Western perspective, I think you are safe and I permit you to visit with me. Now, if we think about it from an Indigenous perspective, it's grounded in very different values. It's grounded in relationality, reciprocity, and accountability. So when I visit with you from this way of Kyokuin, it means that I am equal in this partnership as you are. That means I have an accountability to give as much as you give, and we both walk that journey together. And it also means that if you are visiting with me, I understand that I have an opportunity and a responsibility to visit with you in times more than just an extractive process. So in times more than, you know, I'm coming over, my boyfriend broke up with me, I'm coming over because I need to cry. Visiting means that we do this more long-term. And so let's talk about where this makes the biggest impact. And that's going to be in our networking. So I'll get you to switch over once more for me, Cameron, thank you. So how does Kyokuin, if we start decolonizing the way that we visit, how does that change? Well, the biggest area is going to be when you are branding yourself at networking. Before we would brand, our branding would be, you know, having a quick chat with each other. Maybe we'd have a small sales pitch. We tell people who we are. We probably end up with a ton of business cards. It's really useful for individual contacts. It's, you know, lots of people in a short amount of time. And a lot of the times we don't talk to those people ever again. And if we do, it's really because we only need one or two things. And to be honest with you, the communication is mostly email. Perhaps you might give a phone call to somebody, right? But if we look at branding ourselves and doing it in a way of Kyokuin, the visiting way, networking changes. Now we're spending more time visiting. And that means because it takes more time, we're not going to spend as much or we're not going to have as many people to visit with. We're going to have a smaller amount of people that we do network with in our brand, but those people are going to be really aligned with our brand. And then we're going to be able to take those relationships and not just start them, but we're going to develop them over time. We're going to nourish those relationships as we go. And then that relationality becomes cyclical and it'll integrate into your brand even more. And as you're sort of branding yourself, you're going to be aligning with people who have similar values. You're going to find opportunities that you can support each other, gaps where you might problem solve. But in the previous way where you would network, you would just kind of meet new people as much as possible so that you can get those relationships. When we do it from Kyokuin, those relationships then can come from those other relationships. You know, that network grows from within itself. So I think these are important ways to decolonize our brand and ways that we can kind of and keep that going. So, and keeping that going reminds me of consistency, which I know, Elizabeth, you've got some really good tips on. So maybe I can get you to jump into that part.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Peyton. I really love listening to Peyton talk. She always has some great tips. We're so glad that she could join us in the presentation today. Yeah, I would say consistency is key. Being consistent is very similar to having a narrow focus, and it's so much easier to get recognized for one topic if you're consistently creating your brand voice around that. If you think about the golden arches or a tiny swoosh, those things immediately bring familiarity when you're thinking about fast food or sneakers. So how does that translate to your personal brand? Well, without a consistent message, your personal brand really doesn't mean anything. The more you speak, think, write, and care about that brand, the more you're going to be delivering that same message to your audience. People are watching you. Their perceptions of you can build a brand image in their mind already. You know, thinking back to what Peyton just said, you know, she saw herself as soft, but people didn't actually see that. So she had to change that perception. One of the questions you might ask yourself is, what is it that you consistently deliver that keeps other people loyal or coming back to you for business? And sometimes you might not always like to answer the question, but when you ask it, you're becoming more aware of how your actions play into your brand. So every day you're sending a message about you and your brand to those that come into contact with you. And so what are you saying? Are you positive? Are you looking for solutions? Are you focusing on the negative or the gaps in what you know, what others do? Never underestimate how the tiny inconsistencies can really derail your personal brand effectiveness. It doesn't matter if you're creating an incredibly out there fun brand or one that's like a bit more on the conservative side. I always say that consistency is key, and that's how you really don't fragment yourself, back to what Peyton was talking about earlier. I think I'm gonna throw it over to Melaina now, and she's gonna talk a little bit more about the branding, the design elements of branding.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So now we're going to jump into more of the technical design aspects of branding. So logos and a visual representation of who you are and your brand are incredibly important. It is the first thing people will see when they interact with you or your brand. Your logo and brand represents who you are, what you stand for, and can create a strong connection and impact with your audience. In regards to my design practices here at PBGuan Pataguan, I'm continuously trying to recognize and decolonize my practice. Branding and design in general have specific rules and guidelines, which are learned in school, and I'm continuously learning how to acknowledge where and when to decolonize. I'm not an expert at this, and this is something that I've been learning when working with Indigenous communities and companies. To decolonize to design is to fundamentally change the way the industry is run in order to create better products and experiences for everyone. A departure from design's Eurocentric roots, it instead focuses on amplifying diverse voices with unique values, beliefs, and lived experiences. One example in my practice so far is I had a client that wanted 7 colors in their logo. Each of the colors held a specific meaning to the organization and brand, but also a connection to the number 7. From my schooling, we were taught to stick to no more than 3 to 4 colors in a logo. And this is very challenging to acknowledge my education and schooling, but then to also acknowledge the meaning and importance of these colors to my client and community. Color has an impact, and many popular brands and logos are recognizable just by their colors. This is because they've built a strong brand identity and presence. They're consistent in their usage, in their logo and brand, and we psychologically connect these aspects when we're out in the world seeing hundreds of logos per day. Just to the next slide. So we're going to play a little guessing game. I'm going to present you with some colors, and I want you to guess what brand you think it is in the chat. All right, I'll give a few more seconds and then we'll reveal the answer. All right, let's reveal it, Cam. So yeah, two guesses that were correct. It is Starbucks. And let's go to the next one. This one might be a bit tougher. Oh, good guess. Okay, let's reveal it, Cam. It is Pepsi. All right, and our last one. Any guesses? All right, let's reveal it, Cam. So it's Google. So from these examples and having a connection with certain brands we interact with or products, we're able to recognize a lot of brands by just their colors. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about the psychology of color. Psychology of color is something that designers consider when they begin designing or creating a logo or brand for an individual or company. Colors have a strong effect on how we perceive and how we feel. For example, red can be associated with love, excitement, and energy, but it can also be associated with anger or danger. If we think about a very recognizable brand such as Starbucks, the colors in their logo include a dark green, black, and white. These colors are associated with nature, growth, prosperity, and quality. These are all things Starbucks strives for when delivering a product to their customers and how they want to be perceived in the market. Now I will pass it on to Cameron to talk a little bit about typography.
Thanks, Melaina. So typography is really important when it comes to how you brand yourself visually. As you can see from the image here, Fonts also present your audience with the tone you want them to feel whenever they look at your brand. Important things that you should be asking yourself when choosing a typeface is this something that resonates with my audience? Is this font an accurate representation of my brand? And lastly, when choosing a typeface, make sure to stay consistent with using it, as this helps your audience connect further with your brand. Next, we're also going to play a little bit of a typography exercise. So for this one, I want you to match in the chat which font you think matches with which company. So for example, which font you think would be law firm, tech company, or jewelry. Now I can't see the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it up to Elizabeth to confirm or deny from there. And yeah, good luck.
I know this is a tougher one. Got some guesses in there. Yeah, so you got a guess of 3A, matching jewelry in the Playfair display. 1C, 2A, 3B, 1C, 2B, yeah, close. 1A, 2B, 3C.
Awesome. Well, so the answers were 1B. So 1 is for Laura, 2C, and then 3 to A. So I think we got some right answers there. But you want to keep in mind that a lot of the time, multiple fonts can apply to your business, and it was a little bit of a trick question with this one. So for these examples, I only used a serif, or two serif fonts and one sans serif font. So Playfair Display and Laura were the serif fonts, and Montserrat was the sans serif font. Now, these two types of font classifications are the biggest used in the design industry and widely used. The main difference between the two is that serif fonts have tails or feet on the letters and make the font feel a little bit sophisticated or calm, while sans serif fonts don't have tails and are seen as more modern and youthful. So for example, the law firm, we associate businesses that have been around for a long time with specific fonts, and this is how our minds make associations with the types of business it is and what feelings we get when we work with or interact with these brands. So for example, a serif font is good for business or a law firm business, as it portrays a more serious tone to your audience. And this was just a quick exercise to show the connections we have already formed with these kinds of businesses, as well as the fonts and the looks and feels. So now I'll pass it back over to Elizabeth to wrap up the presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Cam. Yeah, so really, I mean, at the end of the day, there's no real easy wins here. Personal brand is actually a lifelong project, just like our journey through life. It's constantly evolving and changing. So even experts who build and enhance their brand, the biggest brands in the business, know that there are no hard set rules for creating a personal brand. But some of these general guidelines that we shared with you today, help provide first steps, especially if you're starting new or you're rebranding. Creating the right personal brand will not only help you be known in your field consistently and landing work, but it could also be the difference between someone asking, "Who are you?" and being glad that you're here. So thank you. So we'll take questions.
Well, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Elizabeth, Melaina, Cameron, Peyton. Really good information that you brought to the table today. We're going to open up the floor. Does anyone have any questions? This is a great opportunity to bring your questions. So you can put in the chat box, or you can unmute yourself. I personally was fascinated by the colors. And would black and white, here's my question. Would black and white, because I was first of all like stunned that I didn't know Starbucks colors when those 3 colors came up. I was like, how could I not know that? But my question is for Melaina about the black and white. Would that be like, would you need another splash of color? If you're going to go with black and white.
I mean, that really depends on, your audience and how you want to be seen. I see those kind of as colors that are really useful with like a pop of color, as they're more neutral and they can be used in different ways. So yeah, it really depends on how you want your brand to look and your logo to look. And yeah, what kind of colors would complement those or bring those out a little bit more. So yeah, really dependent on those kind of things.
Okay, so would you be the one then to consult to say, hey, I'm looking to maybe rebrand or develop a logo and my color scheme? So would that be your field? Would somebody come to you and say, hey, could you help me, direct me, guide me? Was that kind of your field house?
Yeah, definitely. It starts with like a conversation about, feelings and how they want to be portrayed. And then from there, yeah, I just kind of help them find a color palette that works for them and how they want to be perceived.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you. All right, let's check out this chat box, see if there's any questions here. Yeah, Zen, aka Ken, he's coming from Ontario. Thank you for sharing the concepts that are new to me. And so it was a really great presentation that you brought today, everyone. So again, the floor is open. This is a great opportunity. With that website, is it Shiloh? No, it's Slido. Good thing I wrote it down. Is that free? And is it an app?
Yeah, there's a couple of different versions. So you can get it free. It's a web-based, but you can also access it from your phone. The free version allows you to ask 2 or 3 questions, whereas the full version, you can ask as many. And it's a great engagement tool for a bunch of other things as well. But yeah, and I really love your answer just then, Melaina, because you were talking about like, how do you incorporate that sort of branding? But as soon as Michelle, you asked about black and white, Lush Cosmetics came to my mind. And then I was like, oh, there's so many others. And so I think, Melaina, you got quite a few questions coming to you about these colors and how we bring them in.
Yeah, so thanks, Peyton. Okay, in the chat box, how do you direct the conversation about the client that wanted 7 colors when it's best to keep it down to 4? Great question, Bunney. I'll hand that off to whoever wants to field it.
Sure, I'll take that one. So yeah, this client, the 7 colors are really important to them. Each of the 7 colors actually represented ribbons that were given to students once they graduated. So this was really important to have in the logo. Again, it's working with your client to make something that they hold a lot of meaning with and that they're happy with. So when I learned that it's, best to have 3 to 4 colors, sometimes we just kind of take that aside and decolonize that view of design that we learned to then, consider these 7 colors and really work that into the logo, to represent that meaning and which holds value to that community, especially. So yeah, it's a hard thing, but yeah, it's meaningful and yeah.
Okay, the next question, and again, I'm opening this up to whoever feels it's appropriate to answer it, is you've given us answers to the type exercise, but design is ultimately subjective. How can we ensure we've gotten our design right?
So ultimately, you want to make sure that you're comparing it to brands or companies that do something similar to what your business is trying to set out and accomplish. So a good way to make sure that you're doing it right is, for example, let's say you're using a serif font and you want to appeal to a younger demographic. Compare it to some brands that use serif fonts. So for example, Lush, or I guess Apple would be a good one. So it's a modern, widely appealing demographic. So I'd say mostly just try and see what other companies are doing and see how they're successful with using those typefaces in their brand.
What if I can jump in here real quickly? I was going to say that, you know, when we go through branding exercises with our clients, it's a pretty in-depth activity that we do with them, and we spend a couple of hours really trying to like get to the heart of what it is they want to say and who they are, their purpose, exactly back to what we were talking about earlier. And so, you know, the feeling that you want to evoke by the colors, by the typeface, by the images, those kinds of things are really important. And Cameron and Melaina are really good at translating that into a design, you know, really listening and understanding what our clients want and hear what they're looking for and translating that. And so, yeah.
So is it important to keep the font the same across the board? So I just newly discovered Canva in the summer, and I'm like, where has this been all my life? And so I try to stick with the same font, but I kind of also like other fonts that I want to play around with. So what would you advise about that? Keeping that font the same, or can you step outside that box?
I'd say for brand messaging and things that you're directly speaking to as your brand, use the same font so that your audience can connect to that and recognize that easily. But if you're using it on social media, and let's say you're doing a holiday post and you want to use a fun holiday font, like I'd say that's where you have the creative freedom, right? And it really just depends on the scenario and the messaging for sure when you're using fonts.
Thank you. All right, we have about 10 more minutes. Bring those questions, or I will keep asking questions, because I think this is an amazing resource at our fingertips right now. So anyone want to jump in? I also loved the exercise of picking, you know, 5 words. How do you want to be seen, or how do you describe yourself? And that just speaks to intentionality. What message do I want to bring to the world? And it helps us to just focus, and because sometimes it can be busy out there. And so for me, sometimes I'm all over the place. So that exercise was excellent, and it helped me to remind me of the why. All right, so Bunney, what was the app that, okay, so was that answered? The app, which is the Slido. Okay. So we answered that. Go ahead.
I might expand on that a little bit, because, you know, before you bring in someone like Melaina or Cameron to talk about your brand and your organization, you can do the same sort of exercise just with what you've already got and get some of that feedback, right? It's sort of a little bit of strategic planning, where you say, like, what do people see in this? And then you can decide, do I like this or not? And that's maybe how you start that conversation with a professional like Melaina or Cameron, of kind of doing that check and balance.
Yeah, that's really excellent. My websites had crashed in the summer. Like, I don't know how, I don't know what, I think, you know, in hindsight, that was creators saying, girl, you got to change your stuff. And so that caused me to kind of rebrand some things and look at colors, look at fonts, and look at the why, and look at the messaging. Like, what do I want to bring to the world? My old website was like dark, because I love the color black. So everything was black in my world, but it was only because I liked that color. And so it was a really great opportunity for me to just relook and again, pull back those layers. Why? What is the message here? So yeah. So you guys specialize in helping people rebrand. So I could come to you and say, hey, I'm looking for help to rebrand. So I would contact you. Is there a process to this?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you would just reach out to us. I can throw an email here in the chat. But we also I'll throw our website in there as well. It's bbquan.com. Yeah, and one of us will get in touch with you. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, we got a question from Patrick. Oh, and then I see another question there too. So we'll go Patrick, and then I'll bring your question, LP. So do you ever get called upon to brand lines of goods and services?
Have we? We've got quite a few design projects. Sorry, I started with the company in February, so I don't have the same knowledge that Cameron and Melaina have, but have we branded any goods and services yet?
I don't think goods, but like services in terms of like people offering services. We've done some design for them. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, the next question. So how would you explain or even talk more about defining the decolonization of Indigenous design?
I'm not an expert at it, but I think it's kind of acknowledging the design from an Indigenous lens, and then also challenging like Eurocentric views and what we learn in school, especially. That's what I'm finding. So, and it's also like incorporating meaningful things from different Indigenous communities into design. I think that's very important. So it's constantly, thinking about these things in my practice, especially, and how we change these in design. Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has anything to add.
Well, it's kind of even, building on that a little bit more in terms of decolonizing business in general. This is something that we're still trying to wrap our heads around what that looks like. And, you've been trained a certain way for so long, that Eurocentric view. Just questioning, really being curious and questioning why things are the way they are. Why have we always done this thing that way? I think that is kind of at the root of decolonizing what we're trying to do. I don't know if that helps, but yeah, I mean, we're not experts for sure. It's going to take a lot of years of undoing, but yeah, just being curious about why we're doing things the way that we do them.
Great. We have a question from Bunney. Is there advice you give to clients with regards to logo formulation that is easily read by scanning apps or business card reading apps and keeping the modern age of technology in the forefront?
I'm not sure if I've ever seen anything about business card reading apps, but one of the biggest tips I'd say is always make sure that your logo is scalable, and meaning like you want to be able to easily recognize it at small sizes. So on a business card, something that's small, you want to make sure that it's something that's easily picked up on, and people can recognize you by at every size, whether it's on a billboard or as small as on a business card or a piece of paper, for sure.
Awesome. All right, well, we have time for one last question. If anyone wants to come in, this is your day. I always say, like, there's no such thing as a wrong question. We're all in this journey. We're learning together. It's important to ask those questions. It's important to have that dialogue, no matter how big or small. So, okay, here we go. Bunney, I'd like to know what technologies or social media elements that you keep in mind and remind clients to consider when creating a brand, logo, etc.
That's a designer question.
Yeah.
I guess this is something that you have to consider when you want to market your brand and your business, I guess, what channels you're going to use. So whether it's TikTok or Instagram, Twitter, it really depends. But one of the big things is just to keep it consistent again, so that people know that that's your brand. And when they see it, they can kind of link it. Yeah, is there anything else, Cam?
I was gonna say consistent too, so you got it.
Awesome. I think that that's amazing advice about consistency. I think, right, you even put in your PowerPoint, Elizabeth, talking earlier on, consistency is key. And I think that that's so applicable. All right. Well, I think that's it, unless somebody else wants to come on in. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. You brought in some good knowledge. I feel like my creativity, just listening to you and your presentation is flowing. So thank you for what you brought to the table today. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. It is the last day of November. We give thanks for the gift of what this month had given to us, and tomorrow is a new month. A new day. So thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you next week. There's only 2 more Innovate BC webinars for 2022. So we hope to see you again soon. All right. Thank you again to our guest speakers. Thank you for bringing your story, a little bit of your story, the knowledge, and all of the goodness. So to you, we say, Kinanan Skomtanan. We thank you. I thank you. So be well.